Hey, it's Conrad Thompson, and you're listening to 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Eric, what's going on, man? How are you?
I'm doing great today. Mrs. B is in Los Angeles with our daughter, Montana, making sure everything is kind of cool. She's right on the edge of the evacuation zone, so we felt it was pretty important to get there and see if she needs any help. So I couldn't leave, but Lori is there. So I'm flying solo, man. I got the house to myself for a few days and kicking back, enjoying talking to you guys.
Man, thoughts and prayers for everybody in California. Man, they're going through it right now. I don't know anyone really close in my life that's been affected, but Jeremy from Jazz Wares has always been super friendly with me, and my man got completely wiped out, like a lifelong collector, and the entire collection, all of his personal possessions just gone, Eric. Like this is crazy, scary stuff happening in 2025 already.
Yeah, a good. In fact, I mentioned his name here, Gary Considine, the former executive producer of the Tonight Show. I talked to him yesterday, and they had to just pack up and leave. And he said, between the down power lines and the fires and people panicking, it wasn't worth holding out any longer. So it's amazing when you look at the devastation. You know, some of the aerial drone shots that they're putting out there on television. It looks. I mean, some of the shots I've seen, it looks like Hiroshima. I mean, just thousands of homes in Pacific Palisades just leveled. There's nothing to repair. They're just leveled. And I can't imagine what the future looks like for that area and the people in it. A lot of them have lost their homeowners insurance because the state of California put a cap on what insurance companies could charge for homes in high risk areas. So the insurance companies more or less were forced to bail. And there's a lot of people that lost their homes that have marginal insurance or no insurance. And then you think about it, even if you had insurance, now you have to rebuild at a cost that's probably twice as high as your insurance coverage when you can find I mean, how are these people going to live? You know, and you hear about the super wealthy people. They have options. You know, it's horrible for them. Don't get me wrong. It's fucking horrible. But it's horrible and you have options. There are so many thousands of people that have lost everything, not just their home, which in most cases are the biggest investment or financial safety net that a lot of people have. They've not only lost all that, their furniture, their memories, and memorabilia, but how are they going to rebuild? And even if they could, where are they going to get insurance to cover the new home they just built? It's a really, really horrible situation that's going to take decades to recover from, I think.
Well, our thoughts and prayers are with that entire community. I just can't imagine going through that, and to know that that's happening here in America is just crazy. Um, our topic today is going to be watching an old episode of Monday Night Raw from 25 years ago. We want you to join us. It went down on January 3rd, 2000. So fire up your Netflix, head on over to the Raw Vault. This is the year 2000. It went down on January 3rd. Of course, if you're looking to hear what Eric thought about the WWE debut on Netflix, it's available for you now at 83weeks.com. We did a live reaction show this past Monday immediately following the show, and it is available and totally free for you right now on YouTube. But we're going to today be talking about Raw in 2000. But before we do, I wanted to at least run through a few things that have happened since you and I hooked up on Monday night after Raw on Netflix. We saw The Rock on NXT. He showed up, and he was announced, of course, on Netflix that he would be at the NXT show, which was there in LA. And it sold out immediately once he made that announcement. It was a small building. They only needed like 300 tickets to sell, and they did. And The Rock came out and cut a big promo, dropped the F-bomb 4 or 5 times. So maybe you didn't hear all of that, but there's some unedited stuff floating around. If you really want to hear him drop the F-bomb, I don't know why you would, but there it is. But almost 1 million viewers checking out the NXT program on CW. I guess it's no surprise if The Rock's there, people are going to tune in.
Yeah. And he brought a lot of attention to CW, which I think is probably the reason why he made that appearance. Obviously, he wants to help out WWE, but one of the best ways he could help build the WWE brand is by bringing more attention to the CW show, NXT, and mission accomplished, man. Mission accomplished. It'll be interesting to see what next week's ratings are as compared to, say, the previous 3 weeks before Rock's appearance, just to see, how much impact he really had, or residual impact he had.
I'm interested to see where they go with The Rock from here. There's been lots of reports. The rumor and innuendo is that, at least for now, the whole Roman versus Rock feud and match is on hold. Any speculation that it was going to be The Rock and Cody Rhodes at WrestleMania, that seems to not be the case. It feels like, based on what we've seen this week, that The Rock is probably going to sit this WrestleMania out. And respectfully, I don't think they have to have him. This is maybe the most loaded WWE roster of all time. Like, if you're just fantasy booking, you could come up with really big time main events on both nights. That being said, even though I don't think The Rock will necessarily have a big feud and a match at WrestleMania, it would be hard for me to imagine him not even making an appearance at WrestleMania, right?
I don't see it, man. The guy just bought almost 100,000 shares of TKO stock. You think he's not going to try to move a needle anytime he's got the opportunity? I don't think so. I think he loves this. I think it's good for Dwayne Johnson, the actor. I think there's no downside. Now, if he's got a movie project and he's, contractually not able to participate in WrestleMania, I get that. That's business. But I think, unless that's the case, I wouldn't be so quick to write anything off at this point. I think the level of storytelling and the confidence in their creative approach, there being WWE's creative approach, a lot of little Easter eggs that I saw, or perhaps I wanted to see, which is kind of the fun part of all this, right? We talked about that last week. You can read so much into it, and it's one of the things that makes wrestling so much fun as compared to other forms of entertainment, is because when it's done well, it's very unpredictable, and surprises, and I hate to use the term swerve because it's been abused so much, but plot twists. Let's call them plot twists. Nobody's bastardized that term yet, at least in wrestling. But the plot twists and the little Easter eggs, and there's so much out there right now that I would manage my expectations and enjoy the ride, because I think anything's possible at this point. I wouldn't exclude or include Rock or any matchups that may come of it, because I think they got the creative horsepower to pull just about anything off.
I'm looking forward to seeing what's next for WWE and what's next for Peacock. I don't know if you saw this, Eric, but Billy Corgan's Adventures in Carneyland is finding a new home on Peacock. Mm-hmm. Once upon a time, I would have thought that any wrestling-related content on Peacock would be WWE exclusive, but we know that WWE is looking for a new home for their archives outside of Peacock, and Peacock knows that they're searching for that. If WWE winds up finding a deal somewhere else and they come off of Peacock, do you think that creates an opportunity for another brand, whether it's the NWA or it's MLW or it's TNA, or is there room, do you think, on Peacock's slate of shows that they're going to be offering for some other wrestling promotion if WWE makes a move away completely?
Possibly. I mean, I think it's the bigger question is there a wrestling company out there that has enough steam behind it, enough viewership, enough of an audience that will come along for the ride to Peacock in this case? If they've got a substantial audience that's loyal and their business appears to be growing, I could see it, because content's content and wrestling works. I mean, I was thinking about this, Conrad, kind of a different subject, but along the same lines. We're reviewing a Monday Night Raw from 25 years ago.
Yeah.
Now, depending on the context, 25 years ago seems like forever. It's a generation, technically. In some cases, it feels like 5 minutes ago, depending on the context. But if you look at from a technology point of view, how far we have come in 25 years. We've come so far that if somehow in catering, which is where I like to spend a lot of my time in WWE, I would have been sitting there having some roast beef, maybe a little mashed potatoes, salad. The desserts were really good in WWE catering, so it would have been hard for me not to grab a dessert, in all honesty. But if I'd have been sitting in catering, enjoying my meal, talking to other people in catering, I would have said, you guys know what? Here's my crystal ball. 25 years from now, there's going to be this thing called Netflix. It's going to allow WWE to distribute their show live worldwide. I would have probably gotten escorted from the building, required to take a piss test. They would have wondered what kind of drugs I was on. We've come so far. But as far as we've come, if you step back and kind of take a macro view of the wrestling industry since the 60s, I've said this before, and I think it's really worth saying now. Professional wrestling has always been on the leading edge of the evolution of content distribution. Before cable came along, wrestling was the most watched show in almost every major market every single week. The little studio shows with 50 people in the audience and horrible production and smoke-filled venues, as they've been referred to as. They were just small studio shows. And when they were produced in larger events, they were dark. I don't have to describe it. You all know what they look like. That was throughout the 60s into the 70s. And then cable came along. So wrestling went from being one of the most popular shows on local television. Cable comes along. Professional wrestling becomes one of the leading programs on all of cable and has maintained that status since the beginning of cable television time. And then pay-per-view evolved out of cable, and professional wrestling had been on the leading edge of all pay-per-view content for decades. And then streaming, OTT came along, and Vince McMahon, you can criticize Vince. There's a lot to criticize, but you cannot criticize his vision and his focus on achieving things from that vision. And the OTT, abandoning pay-per-view, which represented probably a minimum of 25% of their net revenues, abandoning that format and taking a new approach with OTT is what set WWE up for the Netflix opportunity that we're seeing now. My point in all this is professional wrestling has been on the leading edge of television content and programming throughout all the different forms of distribution. Syndication, cable, now streaming. And if you look at, when I first went to work for Ted Turner, the Turner organization, somebody wrote a book, I think it was by Porter Bibb, who is the author. It was a book about Ted Turner. And in that book, one of the things Ted talked about professional wrestling and why he got involved. And one of the things he pointed out, it was a short paragraph or so, but it was clear that Ted viewed professional wrestling back before he had a lot of money, before he could buy the MGM library, before he could be competitive and pay top dollar for second run programming. He had to buy whatever he could afford. And Ted knew that professional wrestling, although it is not, spit shined, it's not always pretty compared to other forms of entertainment. It works and it's cheap. Which is why in this long-winded way I'm saying to you, I think there is an opportunity for TNA or NWA or any small independent-ish small television footprint wrestling company out there to end up on a Peacock because it works. It can work. And if somebody's out there like TNA has got, there are certain things about TNA. Now I'm just from very much on the outside. I don't follow TNA on a regular basis, but I kind of keep my finger on the pulse a little bit. They're making moves. They're doing things that imply growth. or at least suggest that they've got their eye on growing their business. Sometimes that's all it takes to make someone comfortable placing a bet on you. So I do think, because wrestling works, if you're Peacock and you need that, you need that traffic, that professional wrestling historically has one of the most loyal, committed audiences of any form of content out there. So I think there is hope, and I think there is a chance, regardless whether WWE re-ups with Peacock or not. I think there's going to be a lot of opportunity for wrestling companies that are positioned to take advantage of it.
Well, you need to take advantage of what Prize Picks is doing right now. They're making the NFL a lot of fun. And of course, we're in the middle of the playoffs, and I'm looking to have some fun and make a little money and get a little juice going. I just absolutely love Prize Picks. My cousins actually introduced me to this years ago. Derek and Clint Jones, shout out to my boys. Man, they're the real deal. Prize Picks, these folks, they figured it out, how to make it simple, how to make it easy, how to make it fun. Prize Picks is the best way to get action on sports in more than 30 states, including California, Texas, Georgia, and Florida. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action. In fact, join more than 10 million members and sign up today. They even invented the flex play, which means you can still cash out even if your lineup isn't perfect. You can double your money even if one of your picks doesn't hit. Prize Picks puts their members first, so all their withdrawals, they're fast, they're safe, they're secure. And when your picks hit, you can get your money in as quick as 15 minutes. Prize Picks now even has MasterCard for quick and easy deposits into your accounts all sports season long. But this is a big deal. If you sign up today, you can get $50 when you just play $5. You don't even need to win in order to receive that $50 bonus. It's guaranteed. They've got all kinds of weekly promotions too. Things like Taco Tuesdays, where they're going to discount certain player projections by up to 25%. So you can win even more. And it's really, really simple. You just take a look at the lineup this weekend of all the different games and you say, hey, I think this guy's going to get more of this or less that. With simple stats, touchdowns, passing yards, receiving yards, rushing yards. It's simple stuff. Like you might say, hey, I think Russell Wilson is going to have less than 250 yards. Or I think Lamar Jackson is going to have more than 70 yards on the ground. That's it. You're simple. You're locked in. I can't stress how easy this is. You pick a couple players, you pick a couple stat types, and you're in the game. Prize Picks makes it easy. It's super fun. And if you've listened to this show for a long time, I don't really have an NFL team. I'm more of a college football guy. But man, with Prize Picks, I have so much fun watching the games. I'm more involved. I'm more engaged. And I'm having a lot of fun. I want you to go try it right now. Download the app today. Use the code 83weeks. You'll get $50 instantly to play after your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks. Run your game. So listen, man, we're going to be talking about Raw from 25 years ago. But before we do, I do think we need to at least address some of the more breaking news as you and I are recording on a Friday morning. Of course, the show normally comes out on Friday. We had some technical challenges yesterday, so we're glad to be recording.
Yeah, that's called me. I'm the technical challenge, just so you know.
Well, either way, we're delighted that you're here and up and running, and we're sorry we're a little late, but I'm kind of glad we're a little late because had we recorded yesterday, we wouldn't be able to talk about the breaking news. So we are going to talk about the breaking news, but before we do that, I want to mention that you're going to be making another appearance for MLW. They've got a Kings of Coliseum show coming up. And this is going to be happening in Texas, right there in the Dallas area. Tickets are on sale now at mlwdallas.com. That's mlwdallas.com. Tickets are on sale right now. I think that's coming up this Saturday. So be sure to check that out. And if you can't make it to Dallas at mlwdallas.com, then be sure to check it out live on YouTube. That's tomorrow night, Saturday night, January 11th in Dallas on YouTube. The breaking news today, though, Eric, is all about Vince McMahon. We started January of 2024 with some pretty heavy news about Vince. And now we're hearing that at least the SEC investigation maybe about the misappropriation of funds, or I don't exactly know what the charge was. It's apparently been settled. As I understand it, there was a $400,000 fine that he'll pay, and then he's got to reimburse WWE $1.3 million in change. I guess this all goes back to the payouts that were issued. Maybe they should have been his personal funds, not WWE funds. He's making WWE whole. But Vince McMahon came out and had a pretty strong statement. Case closed. And I think a lot of people are, well, let's just read the statement here. I mean, there you see it if you're watching with us over at 83weeks.com. The case is closed. Today ends nearly 3 years of investigation by different governmental agencies. There's been a great deal of speculation about what exactly the government was investigating and what the outcome would be. As today's resolution shows, much of that speculation was misguided and misleading. In the end, there was never anything more to this than minor accounting errors with regard to some personal payments that I made several years ago while I was CEO of WWE. I'm thrilled that I can now put all this behind me. Of course, he's not putting all the lawsuits behind him. Janelle Grant's lawsuit has still continued. Her attorney actually issued a statement already today saying during this time, leading WWE, Vince McMahon acted as if rules did not apply to him. And now we have confirmation that he repeatedly broke the law to cover up his horrifying behavior, including human trafficking. The SEC's charges prove the NDA Vince McMahon coerced Ms. Grant into signing violates the law, and therefore her case must be heard in court. While prosecutors for the Southern District of New York continue their criminal investigation, we look forward to bringing forward new evidence in our civil case about the sexual exploitation of Ms. Grant endured by WWE by Vince McMahon and John Laurinaitis.
Can you leave that up while we talk about this, Conrad? There's some of that I want to cover.
Sure, absolutely.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, I just want to hear from you, man. What do you make of all this? I mean, obviously, the statement from Vince, I think at a glance, if you didn't really know what was going on, you would think, oh, well, he settled it. He's out of trouble. It's all finished. It's all good. Well, not exactly, but certainly there is a difference between a government investigation and a civil lawsuit. And I know that sometimes people get those things confused, but hey, man, the government, they'll fuck around, put you in prison, take your shit and freeze assets and blah, blah, blah. A civil lawsuit, hey, man, maybe she gets a judgment. Maybe she gets paid. I mean, civil matters are totally different from criminal matters. So if this is a criminal investigation that has been sunset, and again, we're just getting all this information fresh this morning, I could see why Vince would feel like, hey, we need to let everybody know case closed, but that's not exactly the whole story, Eric.
Well, what do you know when this statement from Ann Callis, the attorney, when did that just come out this morning?
Yes, it did. It's in response to his statement he posted.
So here's the conflict and maybe it's because I haven't had enough coffee today, but Vince is coming out and saying case closed. It's over. He's been fined, which suggests that the case is over and he has been fined appropriately. And it's over, except in this statement. And this is why I hate this shit that's being played out.
No, Eric, there's multiple things. It's not the same lawsuit. That's what I was trying to say. Maybe I did a poor job communicating that, but
no, I get the lawsuit. The lawsuit is pending. The civil lawsuit is completely different than the criminal suit. But Vince's statement suggests that the criminal investigation by the prosecutors for the Southern District of New York is over. But here it's saying while prosecutors for the Southern District of New York continue their criminal investigation. So my question is, am I missing something, or is Vince right and this is over and this statement is misleading, or is Vince's statement misleading because there's still an investigation going on? I'm just confused.
Well, there's multiple investigations going on here. First is the civil lawsuit from Janelle Grant. We know that that's still going on. But the case closed thing, I believe, was about, did he use WWE funds to pay for personal things? So that was almost, and this isn't the technical word. I'm not an attorney, so I'm not saying it correctly. But I think this was about, did you embezzle from the company and not disclose it to shareholders? We need to make them whole. Did you use this money incorrectly? So I think that is the case. But when it gets posted and it says case closed, I think Vince sort of, when he says, hey, the case is closed, and that's sort of the headline, I think the takeaway he's looking for is that people will say, oh, yeah, we can put all this behind him. I mean, he even says that. I'm looking forward to.
So what are the other criminal investigations that are going on?
Well, so there's that. So he was not charged, but an investigation began in February of last year about sex trafficking and sexual assault. So that's what the Southern District of New York was referring to in February of last year. But when these payouts first became public, and I think it was like the summer, maybe June of 2022, I think that is when people started to ask, hey, who made the payment for these settlements? Was it Vince or was it WWE? Because if it's WWE, then that's shareholder money and it wasn't disclosed. Was he not truthful or forthright or honest in the disclosure of who was paid and from what funds? That part seems to be in the rearview mirror now. $400,000 fine, from what I understand, and reimbursed WWE $1.33 million. But I still think that the actual lawsuit is still going on, both civilly from Janelle Grant, and then maybe this other investigation that is tied to what Janelle Grant is alleging. I think those two were. I think Janelle Grant's lawsuit in January triggered the response in February, if that makes sense.
So it was the SEC that was investigating Vince for mismanaging reporting, and that case is closed. But you're suggesting that there is another investigation by another agency, that being Southern District of New York, on charges not related to the reporting of funds.
That's right. So the SEC is going to investigate financial crimes. And so, they're just looking at how did we handle WWE shareholders through this process? That is in the rearview mirror. I don't know that he's been formally or officially charged of anything from the Southern District of New York. We believe they started an investigation last February. As we sit here 11 months later, we haven't heard anything. But yeah, it doesn't feel like it's all in the rearview mirror for Vince, but it doesn't surprise me that Vince wants to put the best face on this he can. Hey, one down.
And I'm not taking sides here, Conrad, but this is when I say I hate, and not just for this case. It's not, trust me, I don't have any personal relationship with Vince McMahon, but other than our history, it's not like we're friends. We don't socialize. We don't chat, that kind of thing. He didn't send me a bottle of wine for Christmas, nothing. But when these cases are being played out in public, and you get these various statements from the attorneys, or in Vince's case, from him himself, you just can't read into or believe too much of what you read, because it's all posturing. It's all sales. It's all trying to shape public opinion, and facts get lost or buried or omitted in the process of trying to convince the general public that whatever you want them to believe is true is true. It's just the information available is just really, really misleading and confusing. I just can't pay attention to too much of it. React to it a little bit, but I don't bet a lot of money on anything that I read anymore.
Well, we're glad that you're here with us, and we're not going to be doing a bunch of reading today, but we are going to be doing some watching. So if you haven't already, fire up your Netflix, head on over to the Raw Vault. The year was 2000. We're going to be watching January 3rd, 2000. But before we do, I want to mention that we just recently decided to take a look back at an old episode of WCW Saturday Night, all the way back 30 years ago to August of 94, where we could still see a shift in character and development of a very young Steve Austin. Let's take a listen.
Those changes from kind of the loud tights that he would wear with the long hair and the robes, and how he had started shifting to being a little bit more of this kind of tough demeanor. Did that just happen? Was that something, do you remember him being instructed to do?
Well, he wouldn't have been instructed by me necessarily, although by the time Steve left, I was obviously more involved operationally, but still not creatively, right? I mean, I was dipping my toe in the water. So that any change in his appearance, most likely, to be honest, it would have been Steve just going, you know what, I'm going to try something different, because there wasn't a lot of control or direction from anybody in creative when it came to attire or the nuances of a character. Should I wear bright red ties or should I wear black ties? Should I get rid of some of this glitzy stuff in my ring gear and maybe come out looking a little more black boots, black tights, working man's wrestler? A lot of times, I would say 75% of the time when there were changes like that, it was just the wrestler, the talent themselves deciding to make a subtle change. I'm guessing that's what it was with Steve, because Steve had been transitioned out of the Hollywood bonds and now back in singles. And gee, who am I now? So in the meantime, I'm just going to put on black boots and black tights till I figure it out. Would not be surprised if it was something as simple as that.
Check it out. You can see the entire episode where Eric is watching an old episode of WCW Saturday Night from August 27th, 1994 over at AdFreeShows.com. And be on the lookout, because Eric is going to be sitting down again this month to watch another fun episode from WCW Saturday Night. This is all bonus content that's never going to be on YouTube or any of our RSS feeds. It's exclusive over at AdFreeShows.com, where you can get a whole bunch of other great series like Lex Expressed. Well, that's right. Lex Luger and The Godfather and Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick and Tully Blanchard and Downtown Bruno and David Crockett Jr. and Sam Adonis. They're all a part of AdFreeShows.com, along with all of my other hosts. We got bonus content each and every month, and it's all available for you now at AdFreeShows.com. We're talking over 100,000 hours of bonus content. Every single panel from StarCast. Plus, you get to be a part of live watch-alongs, live Q&As. You get to be a part of our live studio audience. We want to give a good morning to Anthony and Bobby and everybody who's hanging out with us this morning. But if you haven't,
I want to shout out. Sorry to interrupt you, Conrad, but I want to shout out to Josh Henney, who's not feeling really well right now, but he's going to kick out. He's going to get stronger, going to get better. Josh, thinking about you, man. Get well soon.
Josh is the man. I'll be glad when he's back at full speed. And yeah, let's fire up our Peacocks. Or wow, look at me, force a habit. Fire up our Netflix. It's like I have a hard on for Peacock. Wait, no, if I want a hard on, I know what to do. Blue Chew. Have better sex with Blue Chew. Blue Chew is the original brand offering chewable tablets. These erection enhancing tablets help men achieve stronger, harder, and longer lasting erections for sexual activities. Here's what no one ever wanted: weaker, softer, shorter erections. No, Blue Chew is going to get you where you need to be. Blue Chew is putting its money where its mouth is and even offering you a month for free. The process is simple too. You just sign up at bluechew.com. You consult with one of their licensed medical providers, and once you're approved, you'll receive your prescription within a few days. Blue Chew's tablets are made in the USA. They're prepared and shipped directly to your door. And the best part is it's all online. So there's no visits to the doctor's office. There's no awkward conversation. There's not even any waiting in line at the pharmacy. You can take them anytime, day or night. So plan ahead or be ready whenever an opportunity arises. Blue Chew makes life easier by getting harder and discovering your options at bluechew.com. Why wouldn't you make your life a little easier? So we've got a special deal for our listeners. Check it out, man. Try your first month of Blue Chew free. Just visit bluechew.com for more details and important safety information. And we thank Blue Chew for sponsoring today's podcast. Okay, Eric, no more false finishes. I've teased it a few times. I'm locked and loaded, ready for the playback. Are you ready to go? Are you muted? Are you at all zeros? Are you ready?
I'm ready to go. I'm at 0-1, so I'll take a beat.
We're close enough. Here we go. And 3, 2, 1, play. We're getting the old signature open from Raw is War. All the flames, all the pyro. A lot of high energy in this open. I think it's one of the better Raw opens that that they did through the years. What say you?
I agree. It just had so much energy, and it really defined Raw for being such a unique program. I dig it. I love this. This is my favorite open of all time.
This episode is in Miami, Florida. So, of course, The Rock is going to open the show. Just to give you some context, we're at the beginning of, I guess, what we'll call the McMahon-Helmsley regime. Stephanie has just turned on Vince McMahon a few weeks ago at the pay-per-view main event match between Triple H and Vince McMahon. And now Hunter and Stephanie are the power couple. And this is happening before they're a power couple in real life. But what's that old phrase? Art imitates life. Well, eventually they got together in real life. What did you think of Stephanie becoming a television character? Of course, in 2000, WCW is still a thing. You're on the outside looking in, though, because in January of 2000, they've not yet called you back to work, right?
Yeah, I was on the outside, but I wasn't even looking in. So a lot of this stuff during that, that window of time, 2-3 months, I was aware of it kind of anecdotally, but I certainly wasn't watching wrestling at that point.
This is the era where The Rock's book is coming out. You see it referenced there on the lower third. This is not the Foley style book where he hand wrote it all over several months. No, it's a ghostwritten opportunity. And I don't know that it did nearly the numbers that Foley's book did, but hey, with the success of Foley's book, well, a lot of times in wrestling, when they think there's money in them their heels, well, they all try it. Much like every wrestler's tried a podcast. In this era, every wrestler was trying a book. When do you first remember being pitched about doing a book, Eric?
It was shortly, maybe about a year after I got to WWE. So that would be what, 2003, I guess, 2001, whatever it was. I don't remember. It was about a year after I got there. Somebody, and I don't remember who it was somebody from licensing approached me and said, "Hey, have you ever thought about writing a book?" Not really. I mean, at that point, it was like, what else is there to talk about? Everybody knows everything. What would it be like? And they sat down and explained it to me and what their perspective was. And I thought, what the hell? Much like you said, Conrad, WWE had been having a lot of success. I think they were with Simon & Schuster at that point. Simon & Schuster had tremendous distribution in all the main. This is back when, books and magazines were still hot items. But they were having a tremendous amount of success, and they assured me that I would have a ghostwriter that was excellent and could help make a great story out of it. So I threw my hat in the ring and said, hell, why not?
It's interesting to think about how it all changes and moves around, because I don't think nearly as many wrestlers are interested in doing books now. The Rock is doing his finally. The Rock has come back home. So he's making himself a baby face here. Of course, we're in Miami, where he was a big college football star. I do think of Rock and Miami together. Maybe it's because of the football connotation. I guess these days everybody thinks of Rock with Hollywood. Do you think The Rock would have flourished in WCW, like in an alternate universe, if for whatever reason Pat Patterson doesn't return Rocky Johnson's call and he never gets a look with the WWF, and he wound up going through the power plant? Because that was the way people got into WCW once upon a time. Do you think that The Rock would have enjoyed the same kind of success? I mean, I know that the old phrase, "Oh, the cream always rises to the top," and blah, blah, blah. But knowing what you know about the power plant and the way it ran, I mean, and by the way, not shitting on the power plant. I mean, look at Goldberg and DDP, and there's so many other success stories there. But how do you think The Rock would have done in WCW coming out of the power plant?
I mean, you took the words out of my mouth. I mean, all we have to do to address this hypothetical, because it's purely hypothetical, the only thing that we can draw from is, well, had WCW ever done it before? The answer is yes. In fact, if you look at the parallels between Rock and Bill Goldberg, there's some very interesting ones, particularly in the early portion of their careers. Bill came out of the NFL. Wasn't necessarily a big star in the NFL, but he was a part of the Atlanta Falcons. He was a big star at Georgia. Certainly had some momentum behind him from that, much like Rock had his collegiate football career behind him. And I think Rock probably played in Canadian Football League for a little bit and tried to make his way into the NFL, got hurt, and ended up breaking into wrestling. Bill's story's a little different. I'm not sure if Bill retired because of an injury, but I think at some point Bill realized that his future probably wasn't in the NFL and decided to make a move into wrestling. And they both did almost around the same time. In fact, there's so many parallels between Rock and Bill Goldberg. Maybe we can address some of them here, but they both entered wrestling when wrestling was at its peak at that time, arguably even by today's standards, in terms of it being a mainstream pop culture kind of phenomenon. So both Goldberg came in when wrestling was at its peak. Rock came into WWE when wrestling was beginning to peak for WWE, but the business as a whole was at a fever pitch. And you had such a great roster of talent to help get both of these individuals over. Now, the other thing they had in common is they both had a tremendous amount of charisma. No real wrestling experience, certainly in Bill's case. Probably, maybe, I don't know, a little more in Dwayne's case, Rock's case, I don't know. But they both broke into the business. They both started at the bottom. Bill Goldberg came up through the power plant. Rock came up through the developmental system that WWE had in place at the time, wherever that was, whether it was Smoky Mountain or OVW, or wherever, I don't even know. But he came up and exploded. Both Goldberg and Rock absolutely collapsed the typical trajectory of a wrestling superstar. Take a look at a guy like Steve Austin, by contrast, who had probably been in the business for a decade or more before Stone Cold Steve Austin showed up and took him to the moon, right? And that was not atypical. 6, 8, 10 years, wrestling before you finally break through and start knocking on the door of that superstar status. Well, both Goldberg and Rock did it in a record amount of time, primarily because of their charisma, and we'll just call it charisma, commitment, for sure, but also in large part because of timing. The business was at a fever pitch. I think a more interesting question would be, not that yours wasn't interesting, but as long as we're going to play the hypothetical scenarios, what if Rock and/or Bill Goldberg would have come along in, say, 1994? Remember, Rock stuttered out of the gate. He didn't come out of the gate as a Rock. He stutter-stepped his way into superstardom. He stumbled a few times along the way. Bill Goldberg pretty much hit the ground running. Point being, they both made it to superstar status in large part because of where the business was at and an amazing roster of super talented people that could help get them to where they ultimately got to. So I don't know. We'll never know. I think the obvious is true. I don't think if the timing would have been the same, had Rock come along at the exact same time as Bill, I don't think Rock would have reached the success that he's reached here, clearly. I think a lot of Rock's success outside of the ring had a fair amount to do with the power of the WWE brand. And the power of that brand, even when WCW was at its peak, eclipsed that of WCW. So Rock just had a lot of great things going for him, timing being one, obviously God-given talent and charisma being another. But that WWE machine is different, brother. It creates different opportunities.
You mentioned him and Goldberg started around the same time. Goldberg's first match that we could find over on Cage Match was a dark match against Buddy Lee Parker in June of 1997. March of 96 is when we would see Dwayne Johnson wrestle the Brooklyn Brawler for the first time. And then, believe it or not, Skip, Chris Candido, would pick up a win over Dwayne Johnson in a dark match in San Antonio before a Raw the next day in March of 96. And then he's sent down, he being The Rock, of course, to Memphis to work as Flex Kavana in the USWA before eventually he makes his way to the WWE's main roster. That was November of 1996 at the Survivor Series. So, yeah, they're about a year and 3 months apart from having their very first match. I'll be honest, I never drew that comparison because when I think about someone who had a similar career and explosion, if you will, I tend to think about the Ultimate Warrior, and I know that he didn't have the exact same, maybe too much too soon for Goldberg, but the way the WWF positioned him and his style of matches and things like that. So when I draw a WWF comparison to Goldberg, I would more often than not go to the Ultimate Warrior. But timeline wise, and enjoying success so quickly from that perspective, you certainly think, yeah, man, this is That's a good comparison that I wouldn't have necessarily thought of. Goldberg and The Rock.
And if you want to really have sometime, if you're really bored, like really bored, just pick out a couple of the top wrestlers that we know of. And I don't know, I'm not like Dave Meltzer. I don't know everybody's history. I don't have time, don't have the bandwidth for it. It's not valuable to me. But go back and look at Ric Flair and see how long it took Ric Flair to become a legitimate star, where he's headlining big shows around the country. Steve Austin, we've already talked about, but just go back and look at some of those guys and yeah, we know of them as superstars, but where did they begin and when did they start? And I think 6, 7, 8 years is probably an average before somebody starts really noticing talent. Back then, it's different now. Everything is different now. But both Rock and Bill, they collapsed the timeline dramatically. It is an interesting parallel. I've thought about it a lot, actually.
We're seeing something that we're going to see for years to come here. It's Triple H and The Rock going promo for promo. We see
Triple H. He's stealing my leather jacket gimmick. I mean, God, is there not an original thought in this guy's head? What the fuck?
I love you for that. On the other channel, WCW is perhaps off its doing its lowest at the time that we could have ever imagined for WCW. We're fresh off of Goldberg injuring himself. He punched a window in a limousine. What did you think of that when you saw that happen?
I heard it. I just chuckled. Probably I guess same reaction you just got. I was just, what the fuck, Bill? I mean, I've seen Bill, and I think he probably still does it to this day. One of the ways that Bill, we all have our own, a lot of people have their own ways of focusing or getting themselves fired up or getting into character if you're a performer. Even though I wasn't a wrestler, I had my way of doing it before I went through the curtain, just to transition from being the guy sitting in catering to the guy everybody wanted to hate. Bill's was unique, man. Bill's involved self-inflicted discomfort. It's like banging his head on shit, and forearming walls and putting his fist through glass. And he just had a weird way of getting himself fired up for the show.
Well, that happened on a couple days before Christmas, 1999. So like a week prior to this is when he's punching holes in limousines.
He was mad because I was gone. That's why he hasn't. He shared it with me, on one of those calls that we have. We talk often. We just share a lot of things. As men, sometimes it's good to be vulnerable and open yourself up. And Bill and I have that relationship. And he explained to me, oh gosh, what was it now? 18 months ago or so, almost 2 years ago, in one of these heartfelt conversations, that the reason he put his fist through the windshield of that limo was he was so frustrated because I wasn't there, to help Bill wrap his head around what he was about to do. And, I apologize, but Bill understood.
We should mention that not only did Goldberg hurt himself when he punched the limousine, wasn't a pay-per-view, wasn't a Nitro, it was a Thunder. In a weird way, Thunder is the worst thing that ever happened to WCW.
Well, kidding aside, including my conversation with Bill Goldberg and sharing vulnerabilities, Thunder was from jump. It was the worst thing. It expedited the collapse. It gave all the execs in Turner that wanted to pull the plug on WCW, it gave them so much ammunition. And it just went downhill from day one.
We're seeing DX now do a run-in and put the boots to The Rock. So you got Sean Waltman and you got Billy Gunn and you got the Road Dogg. And I like the way that whole set looks. I don't know if you got a look at that wide shot, but the next time they show it, where you can see that you've got not just the Titantron above the entrance, but you've got, there you go. Silva's got it here for us. Isn't that a cool look? The way
That's
you
very
see
cool.
lined up on the left and right with the two main key characters. Like, what an
And
interesting
again,
look.
for those of, I mean, I think this is cool today for a
Yes.
wrestling show, but look how far we've come.
Yes.
But we've come far from a very, very well produced show. I mean, it's not like this was wrestling in a dingy smoke-filled auditorium in front of 1,200 people. This was a highly, highly well produced live action show, and it's only gotten better. It's mind boggling.
It really is. Now you see Triple H wagging that finger, talking about The Rock. He's putting hard times on The Rock right here. But yeah, this is around the same time of when, I guess a couple of weeks later, the Radicals are going to leave WCW. So this is a pretty big deal. All the stuff that we've got going on here at the exact same time, where we're just a couple of weeks away from Vince Russo being sent home or quitting, whatever you want to say, the first time with WCW. And we're not too far behind them actually calling you back. And this is also the era where we mentioned Goldberg tearing the tendon, but it's also the time when, WCW brought back a bunch of legends, including Jimmy Snuka, who gave Jeff Jarrett the worst injury of his life with a terrible concussion. We're only 4 months removed, or 4 months. This is 4 months ahead of David Arquette winning the WCW World Title. And it's also the era where Chris Benoit is about to win the the WCW Big Gold Belt and then quit the next day because with Vince Russo back at home, Kevin Sullivan's back and he didn't want to be a part of all that. So Benoit, Eddie Guerrero, Dean Malenko, Perry Saturn, they all fold up tent here with WCW and jump to the WWE. What did you think when you heard that group had left and they were now with Vince?
I didn't hear it. I saw it. I was sitting in an Applebee's. It was an Applebee's or a Chili's restaurant right outside the Flying Cloud Airport in suburban Minneapolis. I had been up in Wyoming, been here in Wyoming with my brother, my sister, and my wife. I flew from Atlanta, picked up my brother and sister in Minneapolis, and then flew out here to the house. We watched Super Bowl together, spent a couple days, and I flew my brother and sister back to Minneapolis. Lori and I were going to spend the night there and then jump in a plane and fly back home the next morning. So after we dropped my brother and sister off, Lori and I head over to the hotel near the airport where I parked my plane. And across the street, there was a Chili's or an Applebee's, whatever. I think it was an Applebee's. So we went over there and I'm sitting in the restaurant, ordered my food, probably chips and probably nacho chips, I'm guessing, from Applebee's at that time or Chili's. It's not really great food, but it's not horrible. You can get it down, fills you up. Anyway, we're sitting there and they had TVs going on all around the restaurant. We were kind of in the middle. So I couldn't hear anything, but I could see. And they had Monday Night Raw on. So I'm watching Monday Night Raw and they cut to a shot of the Radicals sitting at ringside. And I couldn't hear anything. So it was like, what the fuck? And once it set in, I looked at my wife. I said, they'll be calling me soon. Swear to you. Remember it like it was 5 minutes ago. And sure as shit, within about 10 days or 2 weeks, whatever it was, I got a call from Brad Siegel.
Can you go ahead and hit me with that Southern phrase again one more time? Sure as what now?
I don't even know what I said. What did I say? Sure shit?
Sure as shit. I mean, you did it with a
shit. 2 syllables. Shit. I learned that from your dad. Oh, shit. I said, Larry, there's not 2 syllables in shit. He goes, bullshit. I went, damn, you're right, Larry. There is 2 syllables in shit.
Well, when he does it, there's the Main Street Posse. We haven't spent any time talking about the Main Street Posse, but what did you think about that as a faction? Giving Shane McMahon his own faction from the main streets of Greenwich, Connecticut, sweater vests and polos. Like, this feels like something you would have appreciated. It feels like it's right out of a movie, right?
I love it.
That's the villains from Nerds or something like that.
I love it. The mean streets of Greenwich, Connecticut. I mean, that's good tongue-in-cheek character shit there. I think it's fun.
It is fun, and that's what WWE is supposed to be. And a lot of people regard 2000 as being, one of the biggest or best years in WWE history as far as creatively. I don't know. It wasn't for me. I, for whatever reason, just didn't connect with WWE in 2000 as well as I had in prior years. Maybe that's just a me thing. Um, Anyway, we're watching Too Cool and the Dudley Boys, who've not been here in the company for very long. They made the jump in August of 99, I believe. So they're just a few months in. Do you remember there ever being even a discussion with the Dudley Boys for WCW? I know that you had Public Enemy and you had Perry Saturn, who was part of the Eliminators, and Mikey Whipwreck, and a lot of other characters, Raven, Sandman, on and on. Do you remember there ever being any even preliminary discussions about the Dudleys in WCW?
Not with me. Now, likely Kevin Sullivan, quite possibly Kevin Sullivan did, but it never got to me.
I don't know why, but I think that Bubba Ray Dudley in WCW feels weird. Obviously he didn't get to do the same sort of heel stuff that he did in ECW here in WWE. Did you ever see any of his mic work when he was healing on the crowd in ECW and really pushing the envelope?
No, but I should. I love Bully's work. First of all, Bully's a good friend. I have a ton of respect for him as a human being, but also as a professional. And I'd love to see him open up. I'm gonna have to go back and look for some of that stuff because he has the ability to be pretty awesome if you let him loose. But he's smart. He knows he's just so talented. He can tear you up, push the envelope, cross the line, get back over it just in time, cross it again, get back over it just in time. Or he can lay out a very nuanced cerebral promo, depending on the situation. He's really, really talented guy. Very underappreciated. I know he's, people put him up on a pretty high pedestal and he deserves it for all the stuff that he and Devon did in the ring. But in terms of his thought process, in terms of his instinct, that's what it's all about. We can call it thought process, creative abilities, blah, blah, blah. It's all just instinct. It's being able to anticipate how people are going to react. And Bully has an uncanny instinct for the wrestling business.
We got to appreciate the uncanny instinct that this man has for the wrestling business. We're backstage now. And we see Michael Cole holding a microphone for both Ron Simmons and John Bradshaw Layfield, who's been having a lot of fun filling in for Bruce Pritchard on Something to Wrestle. Have you caught any of John's episodes of Something to Wrestle, Eric?
I have not yet, but I talked to John yesterday or day before yesterday, and he's having fun with it. So I'm going to check it out.
I think you should also check out Mando. It's safe to use on your pits, Eric. You can even rub some on your balls, your thigh folds, your belly button.
Do it every day.
Your feet. Really? Now, how deep in the asshole do you go with Mando?
Well, I hit the general area. It's not like I do. It's not like I have any probative technique. It's just, just wipe it all down.
Wipe it all down. There you go.
Yes, people don't know. Man, you can take a shower and you think you're clean. You're just fuck. You don't even know. Here's the other thing. We're talking about Mando. The doctor, Shannon Klingman, I think is her name. We'll find out if I'm wrong. I shit you not, Conrad. This is so cool. We should get a Mando buy for life on 83 weeks based on what I'm about to tell you.
Oh,
I'm seeing these Mando commercials. Now, this is before they even became a sponsor here.
okay.
I'm watching these Mando commercials because they're all over the place. And this woman, who is a doctor, starts explaining why Mando is such a great product. And I'm looking at this woman. I'm going, there's something familiar about her. I don't know why. And she's a legit doctor. Legit doctor. Listen to me talking like some kind of wrestling dirt sheet mark. A legitimate doctor. But there's something about her. So for 6 or 8 months, every time she would come up in a Mando commercial, I would look over to my wife. I said, Lori, I know her somehow. And my wife would look at me like, you're just fucking nuts. You're getting old. You're losing your shit. Just sit through the commercial. The show will be back on in a minute. So I kid you not, about 10 nights ago, Lori and I are watching, And Shannon Klingman comes up and starts talking about her underboob. Yeah, it's good for your pits. Oh, she does one commercial. You can put it anywhere in your butt crack. And she goes, here, I'll demonstrate. And she goes to stand up. She's, no, I'm just kidding. She's got a great sense of humor. And she's a doctor. Gynecologist, I believe, which kind of makes sense when you think about it. Anyway, now it's driving me fucking nuts because I think I know her. So I Googled her. She's from Minnetonka, Minnesota. Wow. So I went to high school. And I don't know her. I don't think I've ever met her. I may have met a relative, sister, brother, whatever. Hell, maybe even her mom. I don't know how old she is. But she's from my home. I don't want to say my hometown. I was born in Detroit, but I lived in Minnetonka from the time I was 15 to the time I was 25. So it's kind of cool. She's from my quote unquote hometown. And I knew, and it was something about her voice. It was just this familiarity with her because of where she's from that made me think I knew her. But there's my Mando, Shannon Klingman story. I hope to interview her because I want to know how you go from being a doctor or gynecologist or whatever she was to waking up one morning going, you know what? I'm going to come up with the best antiperspirant deodorant combination that exists on the market. I want one that I can use on and I love how she says under boob. She goes, under boob. It's almost like Larry. She almost puts 2 syllables in boob. Under boob, butt cracks. She's awesome. Shannon Klingman, shout out. I would love to do an interview with you on Wise Choices.
She saw firsthand how normal BO was being misdiagnosed and mistreated, and now Mando has been clinically proven to block odor all day and control it for up to 72 hours. You can get it a solid stick deodorant, which is just like the ones you've always used. It's been formulated and powered by mandelic acid here, though. Why? Because they want to stop odor before it even starts. They've even got a new spray deodorant. I tried it because it's Dave Silva's favorite. It's aluminum free, and it's ideal for those hard to reach places. All their products are baking soda free, they're paraben free, and they come in great scents like bourbon leather, Cloverwoods, Mount Fuji, or Pro Sport. And now Mando is America's #1 whole body deodorant. You can find them in Walmart, Target, and any other retailer across the country. But for the very best deal and to support our show, please go to shopmando.com. That's where you'll find the Mando starter pack. It's perfect for new customers. You'll get the solid stick deodorant, the cream tube deodorant, and 2 free products of your choice, like mini body wash and deodorant wipes. You'll even get free shipping. And as a special deal for our listeners, new customers get $5 off their starter pack with our exclusive code. That's like 40% off your starter pack when you use our code 83weeks at shopmando.com. That's shopmando.com. Please support our show and tell them we sent you. Smell fresher, stay drier, and boost your confidence from head to toe with Mando. So Eric, we're talking over a really fun match here with Kane and Kurt Angle. And this is Kurt's rookie year. You know, Kurt's going to be strapped to the rocket ship or whatever you want to call it over the next year. But he's really making a big impression early working with a big star like Kane. I mean, Kane's still early in his run, but at this point, he's already been world champion. So to just have him in there and do this sort of David and Goliath routine, I really dig it. You know, we talked a little bit about the Dudley Boys and whether or not they were even considered for WCW, and could The Rock have worked in WCW? Well, allegedly, when Kurt Angle had decided, you know what, maybe I need to give pro wrestling a second chance, he had denied in public interviews that he would ever even consider something like that. And then, of course, we know that he had a hiccup, a cup of coffee at an ECW show, and decided, thanks, but no thanks. He even had a preliminary conversation fresh off that world title win or that gold medal win with Vince McMahon and the WWE, but decided, well, I'm a gold medalist, so I can just never lose. So as long as we can figure out a way to do this where I don't lose, well, that didn't work. So he tried some new things. He was a news anchor. He did spokesperson commercials and things like that. He was a public speaker doing motivational speeches. But then he decided, you know what? I need to use some athleticism and I want to make some real money. I need to get into wrestling. He meets Ric Flair, and Ric Flair says, whatever you do, don't go to WCW. Go work for Vince McMahon. He knows how to make a star. He'll make you a star. Now, Rick is saying all that while he works for WCW, and timeline would prove while he's in a bitter war with you. Now, I can't help but wonder if you didn't have your big fight with Ric Flair and there wasn't the back and forth and the suing and so forth, he had already seemingly, maybe he felt like burned a bridge with Vince before because he said, "Hey, I'll come, but I can't lose." Well, there was no offer coming after that. So when he asked Rick, I do think genuinely he was trying to see, "Hey, can you get me in with WCW?" And Rick pumped the brakes on it and said, "No, you need to go to Vince." I find that interesting because
Ric Flair killed WCW.
Well, I don't know that Kurt Angle would, but in an alternate universe, had you not had a pissing contest with Ric Flair, and we've covered that 1,000 times, we don't need to get into it again. But it is interesting because if that timeline is right, if he's not at odds with you, does he come into WCW? What does that change, if anything?
Well, change a lot of things, and none of us will be able to pinpoint, but a lot of things would have changed. What year was this again?
So he's going to make his debut with the company in 1999.
When was his conversation with Rick? Do you know?
I assume that would be 1998.
It would have been interesting because now we're talking that period of time where we cranked out Bill Goldberg
in 97.
So there would have been a reason for us to believe we could do something with a guy with Kurt Angle's talents. It's not like we hadn't done it before. And I get Rick's point. And look, WWE has always had the reputation of being able to build stars, and justifiably so. So I don't think Rick's advice was necessarily wrong. Probably good advice, excellent advice in retrospect. But it does kind of leave the door open as to what would have happened, because we recognize that it is possible to create a superstar out of the power plant, because we did it definitively with Bill, but also with other people. Diamond Dallas Page didn't, come out of the chute learning, knowing how to wrestle. He learned what he learned in a lot of different ways, but the majority of it in the power plant. And with Kurt's background, there would have been a recognition and an effort to exploit that. What could have happened? I don't know. But I think in Kurt's case, it would be hard to look back and say he made the wrong decision, or he could have made a better decision with WCW, because I don't think that would have been true. I think he made the best decision for himself at that time, regardless of Ric Flair's advice, and which I think is probably good advice at the time.
I just find it fascinating to think about these sort of what if alternative, circumstances and situations, because we know that Ric Flair does come back to WCW, but it happens in the fall, like October, November, I believe, 1998. What do you think of what we're watching now? We're seeing China coming down to the ring with the cat, Miss Kitty here, and she's dressed up almost as like a China clone. What do you make of that? China and her mini-me.
China never resonated with me.
Really?
No, I was impressed. Don't get me wrong. Physically, how could you not be impressed? But for me, there was something lacking. It certainly wasn't her presence. She had a great presence, and she was a tremendous amount of ability. But there was just something missing, and I could never quite put my finger on it.
I did think China was a star. She's definitely felt different than, and if we've learned anything on 83 weeks, we know that sometimes that's all you need. By the way, the Kurt Kane match was a DQ. Steve Blackman came down and got involved, and there you go. But now we've got Stephanie McMahon out here to try to solve this whole intercontinental title controversy. You may recall China had just beaten Jeff Jarrett back in October to become the Intercontinental Champion. But then she found herself working with Chris Jericho. And I guess on SmackDown, Jericho forgot to lift his shoulder on the suplex spot. So now we've got co-champions. So we have co-Intercontinental Champions, China and Chris Jericho together. They're the Intercontinental Champion. And I know that sometimes you take some razzing about some of your title decisions.
I was just going to say, this is kind of weird, right?
co-champions. Come on now. That's a little silly, isn't it?
That's a stretch.
Yeah, I think so too. I wanted to ask you about some more recent stuff. You know, we don't usually talk about modern stuff in the middle of an old show, but we're going to do it now because we're watching stuff from 2000, but we're going to talk about something that's happening in 2025. There's reports in the Observer that it looks like Malachi Black may in fact be done with AEW. There's been lots of speculation that maybe he wanted to go back to WWE, and we certainly heard that about other talent. But not that long ago, when he wrestled Adam Cole, I felt like the big bow afterwards and the big thank you and all that, that felt like a farewell. When I said that on the shows, people jumped all over me and said, no, it's not. He's still got plenty of time left on his contract. Why would you say that? Even Malachi Black, I think himself, posted a video denying it, saying, I don't know where this is coming from. It was just a match.
I remember that, actually.
Turns out he might actually be done after all, which is exactly what it looked like. What do you make of this? Because this whole we want to go back to WWE or we want to leave and go to WWE narrative seemingly out there for a handful of guys. Allegedly, that's what Ricky Starks wants to do. Allegedly, Malachi Black wants to do that. There's speculation that I don't know the last time we saw Miro. I mean, there's a whole list of these folks. But I do want to ask you what you think about Malachi Black, and is there going to be an opportunity for that perhaps? And because when I take a look at the Raw and SmackDown roster and what they're doing right now, like they've got so many established stars. If they're not careful, they're going to recreate the AEW circumstance where you've got a lot of talented folks in catering. There's just only so much time here to fit all of this talent in. I'm a Malachi fan. I like his work, but man, it's a crowded space in WWE right now, is it not?
Yeah, sort of, but look at the content that they have to produce. You've got, and I'm confused. Is Raw going to be 3 hours now?
Raw has no time. There's no set time. It's
Okay,
around
so
3 hours, but it could be 40 minutes. It could be 4 hours.
I'm guessing you're going to probably be looking at an average of around 2 hours, but have the ability to go 2.5, 3 hours or whatever, depending on the scenario. It's a lot of content to fill. You've got SmackDown. Now you've got CW. A lot of it depends on what they want to do with the NXT brand. I have no idea. And this is with no respect to what I would do or wouldn't do, but you've got CW. Yes, it's a small network that few people watch, but that's an opportunity. They have an opportunity to not necessarily own, from a technical perspective, the CW network, but if you can become the most powerful franchise on that network, it's in a way better than owning it because you don't have any of the liabilities. And if their goal is to grow NXT and build it bigger, then you'll probably see a lot more stars that might have otherwise been exclusive to Raw or SmackDown showing up on NXT. And I think Malachi Black would be a great character for that, a great athlete, person for that. But, you know, I met Malachi in 2019 when I believe he had just recently arrived in WWE when I did. And Paul Heyman was very, very high on Malachi, almost like overly aggressive about trying to push him. And not to me necessarily, because he was a SmackDown guy and I was Raw, but to Vince. I mean, Paul spent hours and hours and hours in catering, talking with Malachi, helping Malachi, understand his character, understand what he was doing on the show. I mean, Paul took a very active hand in trying to position and groom and get Malachi ready for the opportunity in WWE. And for whatever reason, it didn't work out. Now, that reason could have been Vince. It could have just been a taste thing. Vince, despite Paul's, and I know that Vince respected Paul because he spent a lot of time talking to him, but for whatever reason, Vince didn't see it. Maybe Triple H does. Or maybe he's just a very talented guy that would fit on NXT or CW if there's a growth strategy involved there. It's interesting. I'm guessing. I don't know. I don't know Malachi personally. We don't chat. But I'm guessing he could have probably stayed in AEW and made a lot of money, probably more money than he could make in WWE if indeed he goes there. But guys like Malachi want to perform. I talked about this years ago, 2 years ago at least, when referencing AEW and all the talent they were stacking up. And, you know, you mentioned Miro and a lot of other people who would love to get out of AEW right now, despite the money, because they're not able to perform. When was the last time we saw Miro on TV? Year and a half?
I couldn't tell you.
I mean, talk about killing a guy's career. There's two ways to kill a guy's career: overexpose him and put him on a shelf indefinitely, out of sight, out of mind.
Hey,
That's
I found it.
That's how you kill a brand. And young talent is smart enough to know that. And once the money wears off, because the money's always a thing, right? Oh man, I'm making more money than I've ever made in my life. And your wife or your girlfriend or your parents or whatever, everybody's happy. You get to buy a new car. And then about 6 months later, you're starting to get used to all that shit. It's not a big deal anymore because it's not new anymore. And you're sitting on your ass doing nothing. And you may not think about it consciously, but subconsciously, every day that goes by is a day off of your career. And at some point, you got to get out there and perform and grow. But I think WWE's got enough content, certainly, and I'm guessing it's going to have even more with the international footprint in terms of live events, that there's plenty of room for good talent in WWE, and there will be for years to come.
I think Miro had like 30 matches in 2021 in AEW, but he had 4 in 2022. And he had 7.
This is 2025.
and he had 7 in 2023 and 0.0 in 2024. His last appearance, his last wrestling match was World's End. So New Year's Eve, December 30th, 2023 in Uniondale, New York, Miro and Andrade. Miro picked up a win. I mean, his most recent matches, here's his most recent string. He beat Andrade, Daniel Garcia, Action Andretti, Powerhouse Hobbs, Nick Camarado, Anthony Henry, and Tony Nese. So he's got a winning streak from 2 years ago. But yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens.
You brought this up before weeks ago. It was like, is Tony wrong for tacking on injury time to the back end of contracts? And I stood up for Tony on that one.
Yeah.
And you invest in someone and you expect a return on that investment. And then because of an injury or any other thing that would take that talent out, you lose your opportunity to get that return on that event. You still have to pay them because that's what the contract says. But now you've got a shortened window of opportunity to get a return on your investment. That's not fair. That's not fair. It would not be fair to Tony. So in that situation, absolutely, tack that 3 months, tack that 6 months, do whatever, assuming you're going to use that talent to try to get a return on the investment. That's good faith. That I understand. That's just basic fairness. But to have someone under contract and have no plan for them and not use them, that's when I think you cross the line with whoever it is. We're talking about Miro in this case, but whoever. Because there's a lot of talent that might as well be in the witness protection program. And if there's no plan to use them, for God's sake, I know money doesn't matter because Tony's not held accountable financially for anything, but damn, do the right thing. It's not like it's going to hurt your business, Tony. Just cut them loose, save the money, donate it, whatever.
My favorite version of Miro's WWE career is when he was in WWE as Rusev, and he had Lana, the ravishing Russian, with him. And I thought, man, that whole presentation. I mean, he rode to the ring at WrestleMania on a freaking tank to wrestle John Cena. That's about as big time as it gets. But so much has changed. I don't know that we can even recapture that now. I mean, I'm a fan of Miro. I'm just saying, from what I understand, his real life circumstances changed. So I don't know what that would even look like if they put the band back together and recreate that act or whatever. But man, it was great stuff. And I hope we get to see Malachi Black and Miro doing their thing again somewhere, sometime soon. And allegedly, people are going to see Pentagon on the second episode of Raw on Netflix. How do you think Pentagon will do as a singles performer in WWE in 2025, Eric?
I'd be lying to even take a guess. I'd be just filling air. I don't know. Don't know enough about him. Don't know enough about his history. Again, I would, if I had to place a bet, I would bet the odds of him being successful in WWE are pretty good, because obviously there's a commitment to him. And WWE has demonstrated when they make a commitment to you, it's not a guarantee you're going to become a superstar, but the likelihood of success is fairly high. It's a good bet. So I would make a good bet that he's going to be very successful without even knowing him or his history.
I can't wait to see what Pentagon looks like in the WWE. I'm also excited that we're able to watch Big Show versus Triple H here for the world title. So this is the crossover. So we're going to have a big title match. Big Show came to the ring wearing the big gold belt with the blue strap, and Triple H in 2000 was probably at his physical prime. His match against Cactus Jack at the Royal Rumble later this month is still maybe my favorite Triple H match and one of my favorite Mick Foley matches of all time. But he's not too far, he being the Big Show, he's not too far removed from WCW. I think he debuted around Valentine's Day the prior year. So he's still in his first calendar year. He is the world champ, but they got him wrestling in a t-shirt. When you saw how they were using Big Show, did you regret losing him, or did you feel like the relationship had gotten to a point where it was time?
I could have kept Paul. Don't get me wrong. I like Paul. I've always liked Paul from the first day I met him to the last time I saw him a year or so ago, whatever it was. Paul is a genuinely nice person. He's a good dude to hang out with. He's got a great sense of humor. He's a kind person. He's a very cool guy. And as much as I liked Paul while he was in WCW, I knew there was nowhere to go with him. I shouldn't say that. I didn't believe in my heart that we could get Paul where Paul needed to be, or where Paul thought he could be. You could not, I didn't believe, and still don't, that you can build an entire promotion around a guy like Paul White. He's too freaking big. He's too big to be a good heel. He's too big to sell and be a good baby face. He's just, in terms of laying out story and laying out matches with somebody as physically dominant as Paul White, it's incredibly difficult. You put him in there with, look at what is Triple H at this point? 250, 260?
Yeah.
Looks like Paul's wrestling me. I mean, well, not quite, but you know what I mean? He looks like a child compared to Paul. And yes, if Paul's a good, or I'm using Paul in this example because we're watching him, but anybody that can get in there, yeah, you could be the greatest technical wrestler. You could be like all of Ric Flair and all of Eddie Guerrero and all of Rey Mysterio, whatever. And you put all that together and you're still not going to be able to have a believable match with a guy like Paul White. Yes, you can have a good match. You can have a Dave Meltzer good match, technically speaking. But emotionally, you're never going to connect the way you need to connect if you're going to have a guy like Paul being the head, the face of your company and your champion. It's just too hard. He has to eat too much talent to get there. And then once he's there, then what? And when Paul came to me and said, Vince offered me $1 million a year, guaranteed minimum, he gave me an opportunity. If I wanted to have beat that, I could have. I didn't. I wasn't happy to see him go, but I was happy for him. I didn't think he'd make it. Paul's a very sensitive person when you get to know him. He's a very, very gentle giant. He actually, Google gentle giant, Paul White's picture should come up because that's exactly what he is. And I thought based on what I had heard, I had never been in WWE, that the grind and just the chemistry in the locker room, because he was coming from WCW, and just knowing how important personal relationships were to Paul at that time, I didn't think he'd make it, but he did. And I'm glad he did. He made a lot of money.
Well, it's funny because you had Paul versus Paul there, and we know that this is, believe it or not, this is the debut of the water spit at the end of Triple H's entrance, which became a pretty iconic part of his entrance. And I think this March 3rd, 2000 episode may be the first time that we get to see him do that.
Well, that's because Vince had him, because who is it in the Mr. McMahon documentary? Vince talked about a wrestling character that he loved that used to spit the water.
Yeah. Isn't that cool? I don't remember.
Because you got a memory like a steel trap. You always remember shit.
Yeah, but it's old school. It's before my time, so I don't remember exactly who it was. But
before a lot of our times.
I do know it was one of Vince's favorite performers. Hey, I don't know if you saw, but earlier this week we saw a little bit of a promo battle, if you will, with MJF and Jeff Jarrett. Jeff has announced that he's signed his last talent contract with AEW, and it looks like he's on a collision course now with MJF. I wouldn't have had that on my bingo card for 2025. What do you think of that feud, MJF and Double J?
I don't know how the story comes together, but the match will.
Yeah, the match would be great.
The match would be awesome. Jeff is, in my experience, limited as it may be, working with producers or agents in laying out matches and then watching the result. Because you're in a typical booking situation. Okay, we're gonna have these two guys wrestle, and this guy's gonna go over. Well, okay, that's great. Now you know what's going to happen on the TV format. But how that talent is going to get over is like the really important part. And that's where guys who are really great agents, who really understand psychology, who can anticipate how the audience is going to react, because they can anticipate it, they can pull the right strings at the right moment to get the reaction that they know they can anticipate. That's the art of it, in my opinion, or a good part of it. Jeff is one of the very best I've ever worked with. Now, granted, I didn't work with the Pat Pattersons of the world and other very experienced producers in WWE, but I did, other than Bruce and the people that worked with me as a talent. But Jeff is I think one of the best producers I've ever worked with, because he absolutely understands psychology from the talent's point of view, because he's been around a minute in a lot of different situations. His memory card is full, so to speak. Get a lot to work with, but he also understands the television side. And oftentimes wrestlers really understand what's going on in the ring, but they don't understand, to the extent that they should, what happens outside of the ring in terms of television. Jeff's got it both. So that tells me, especially with a guy like MJF, who has an amazing ability, that we've seen it. You put those two guys together, Jeff's psychology, MJF's youth, ability, character, I'll watch for sure. I'll even write it down on a piece of paper, stick it on the fridge to make sure I don't forget.
We're seeing the big celebration now. Triple H has just won the world title for the second time with a little help from his friends in DX, and down come the green and black balloons and the confetti. And we got a new world champion, Triple H, who's now running the show. It's the Helmsley McMahon regime, or the McMahon Helmsley, whatever. Nice little
Doesn't it feel like Nitro 1997 with the confetti and the colors and the gang warfare? I mean, geez, come on. Is it just me, or no? It can't be.
Of course, they're putting the strap on him because they got to get ready for the Royal Rumble match with Mick Foley. They've also got to get ready for the WrestleMania main event, which is right around the corner. It'll be a fatal 4-way elimination with a McMahon in every corner. Triple H with Stephanie McMahon, The Rock with Mr. McMahon, Mick Foley with Linda McMahon, and Big Show with Shane McMahon. So that's what's on deck for WrestleMania in a few months. But I do want to ask you, that's going to be the first WrestleMania without Stone Cold Steve Austin. I mean, he's their top star, no doubt. Crowned in 98, rides the wave through 99, has to get that neck surgery at the end of 99. When he goes down, it's November of 99, Survivor Series. So you've been home at that point for a couple of months. But when you come back in 2000 and you know that Austin is on the sidelines, he's injured, he's out. Did you see that as an opportunity for WCW? Like when they don't have their top star, much like when Raw was preempted, you probably saw that as an opportunity to try to grow and steal some of that WWF audience because, well, they can't watch the WWF program. So maybe they'll give ours a shot. Did you feel like Austin's absence represented a similar opportunity at all?
Not that I recall. Again, my role when I came back was so much different. I came back as a consultant. So my day-to-day thought process with regard to what was going on in WCW and WWE was completely different than it was when I was running it. And I honestly didn't really think about it. It wasn't my focus at that point. My focus was trying to figure out how to fix what we had versus trying to compete. We were so broken. It was like triage. If you don't make sure the patient doesn't bleed out on the table, it really doesn't matter whether you can perform the heart surgery or not. You got to save the patient. And I was in kind of a save the patient frame of mind, so I just wasn't paying attention.
Well, I know you've been paying attention to your Chubbies, and if you got a novelty mug this Christmas instead of the Chubbies you really wanted, well, we've all been there, but it's not too late to treat yourself for what you truly deserve this year. Chubbies has everything you need to turn your wardrobe and your life around. Start with their Everywhere pants, designed for every occasion, whether you're heading to the office or just kicking back for a lazy football Sunday. Note that these Everywhere pants are spelled everywhere. That's every W-E-A-R. Just so you, the listener, get how clever this is. Everywhere pants. Damn, these guys are good. And if your New Year's resolution is to hit the gym, Chubby's Ultimate Training Shorts are what you want to work out in. With the split side seams and an extended liner, every detail is crafted for effortless movement, whether you're squatting on leg day or hobbling to your car after squatting on leg day. Either way, the goodies will stay safe and secure. And for a limited time, when you use our code ERIC at chubbyshorts.com, you can get 20% off your order. So don't miss out. I actually picked up some Chubbies for my dad. He has a birthday that's right around Christmas, and that's always tough. So you wind up giving two sets of gifts. But I've given Dad Chubbies before in the past, and he absolutely loved them. He wears them around the house. He wears them around the pool. He wears them outside. He wears them everywhere. See what I'm doing there? Chubbies polos are the perfect blend of style and comfort, whether you're hitting the links on the golf course, maybe you're just going out for brunch, or maybe you just want to look sharp without the stuffiness. It's made with a soft, breathable fabric that keeps you cool and comfortable, but still making a statement. And the statement is, I have good taste because I wear Chubbies. And if you're a true thigh exposure enthusiast, you already know Chubbies makes the best swim trunks on the planet. That's not even up for debate at this point. So why not upgrade your gear before your next winter getaway? You're basically guaranteed to have someone ask you where you got them while you're on vacation. So Chubbies is here to help you take on 2025 in style, starting with the most comfortable, most versatile gear you've ever worn. And for a limited time, our friends at Chubbies are giving our listeners 20% off with the promo code ERIC at checkout at chubbyshorts.com. That's 20% off your order with the promo code ERIC. Support our show and tell them we sent you. No matter where the new year takes you, Chubbies has the gear to keep you comfortable and looking your best. Eric, what's been your experience with Chubbies?
My wife smiles at them. Like I got some, obviously a sponsor, right? Had to check it out. It's wintertime here in Wyoming, so it's not like I'm going to be wearing them around the house too often. But of course, I had to try them on, and my wife she just got this kind of sexy smile on her face. I don't know what it meant. but it was reassuring. I look forward to the spring and summer. Could be an interesting time around the Bischoff household here in Cody, Wyoming.
Check it out. I think you'll be glad you did. Chubbies is the real deal. Go right now to chubbyshorts.com/Eric. You'll get 20% off your entire order. That's chubbyshorts.com/Eric. Man, we just saw some hilariousness here. Test and Mae Young and Fabulous Moolah in a tag team against Big Boss Man and Prince Albert. But man, take a look at that, where she's carrying downtown Bruno over her shoulder. Oh, and in the backstage area, we're here just in time for the celebration. And man, this does feel a little NWO, does it not?
Oh my God. Come on, people. If you can't see it, I can't help you. It's too obvious.
Look at Big Show carrying his rollaway. I don't know why, but him walking out holding that suitcase, it looks like
I know, it looks like a lunchbox. It looked like young Conrad Thompson when Conrad was like, I don't know, third grade, walking to school with his metal lunchbox.
Yes. It's hilarious. All right, let's see what's next. We got the APA, the Acolytes. I know that we've talked a little bit about, why did this guy ever come to WCW or that guy ever come to WCW? Did you spend much time with Ron Simmons in WCW? I mean, we know he winds up, coming to work for the WWF in 1996, but he had a cup of coffee with the world title in WCW, and I know you were there for some of that. Do you think he could have had during the Monday Night War era a role for WCW? What might that have looked like had he stuck around WCW?
I don't know, but it would have been awesome. I really, really have a lot of respect for Ron, and I was there for a couple of years while Ron was a power player, so to speak, in WCW, and certainly there when he became world champion. Ron he had so much respect from everybody, but he gave respect. He was very, very, I was a C-Squad announcer. He probably didn't even know my name when I first got there. In fact, I'm sure he didn't. There was no reason for him to. And whenever I had to interview Ron or do something with Ron on camera, he made sure that he was as professional and nice about. He wasn't intimidating. Maybe that's what it was, because he could just be sitting down with his eyes closed, taking a nap, and he's fucking intimidating, right? But I think Ron had so much confidence, and he was aware that he could be a little intimidating, that he went out of his way to not be. That's the best way I can say it. And for someone like me who was coming in from the outside, didn't know anybody, didn't have a relationship with anybody other than Larry Zbyszko and Diamond Dallas Page, and to have a guy of Ron's stature go out of his way to be as pleasant as he was to someone like me, who was oftentimes, when it came to talent, this is the part that people don't understand, when the C-Squad announcer comes back into the locker room, when you're doing whatever you're doing, getting ready for a match, getting done with a match, whatever it is, and you have some third string announcer coming to you, first of all, you know that what you're doing really isn't that important. Otherwise, it would have been Jim Ross and Tony Schiavone doing it. So when the kid from Minneapolis comes looking for you, it's a pain in your ass. And I got a lot of that when I first started, but I didn't get it from Ron Simmons. And that's why I see Ron to this day. He's Mr. Simmons, much like Mr. Regal. A lot of respect for
him. Now we're seeing, this is fun. This is the first time that I've seen this in a long time. Instead of the Mick Foley, have a nice day, it's DX presenting a little miniature movie called Have a Bad Day. And we're going to have Dennis Knight, the guy we know as Mitty, in here, portraying Mick Foley, trying to find a job after wrestling. And he's got he's visiting right now on camera with his unemployment agent, because he's filing for unemployment, and he's of course got to check in and explain what all he's been doing in order to keep those unemployment checks coming. And the unemployment agent is being portrayed by Triple H. The unemployment agent's name. Do you want to guess the character's name here, Eric?
Oh no, I can't. What is it?
That's Mr. Harry Sack. Harry Sack is unable to help Mankind find a job, because he says he's basically just a Muppet who walks around with a damn sock on his hand. And of course, Mankind, wink, wink, tells us, no, it's in my pants. So listen, they're having a little fun to build the Triple H Cactus Jack story and pay-per-view. It's going to come up here pretty soon here at the Royal Rumble. What do you think about these sort of parody mini movies and skits and all this? I know that we tried some of these in WCW and people would take turns dunking on it. Can it be done well? Do you remember any of these little mini movies and skits and parodies that have been done well? Like the Four Horsemen one comes to mind, but I know that created its own set of controversies and problems. What do you think?
I think look, there's room in wrestling for humor. And I think when these skits, which is what they are well produced and written in a way to be tongue in cheek and humorous, I think they have a place. I can't remember off the top of my head, other than the Four Horsemen one that you pointed out. I can't, off the top of my head, recall the ones I liked the best, but I think there were several, both in WWE and in WCW, that were pretty effective.
Oh, check out what's happening now. They've got the cage set up. We're back here ready for the match, and it's going to be a cage match with Jeff Hardy. His opponent, Al Snow.
Wow.
That would have been an independent wrestling dream match not too long before this. You know, Jeff Hardy was working those indies on in the North Carolina era, and he had a lot of buzz, obviously, in this era of WWE. But man, you go back a few years prior to this, and Al Snow was one of the most highly regarded independent talents. I mean, people were he was a tape trading sensation, his series of matches with Sabu. So knowing that him and Sabu created so much history and got so much buzz on the indies, it makes total sense that you'd say, hey, you know what? If we have a Sabu in WWE here in 2000, it might be Jeff Hardy. Let's let Al Snow and Jeff Hardy go out there and tear it up.
Sounds like a thought process, right?
Yeah. Jeff Hardy has recently done an interview. I don't know if you saw this, but he recently did an interview where he basically said he was living pretty hard in his 20s and 30s, but if he was living back then like he is now, he feels like he could have had a career even bigger than John Cena's if he would have been able to maybe get his life together a little bit. What do you think of that? Could you see that in an alternate universe? Jeff Hardy becomes, I mean, he's obviously a megastar, still is. But we know what he's talking about. He had some challenges that maybe got him off track a time or two. Without those, what do you think Jeff Hardy's career would have looked like, Eric?
I think the potential is certainly there. I mean, you saw Jeff, this is 25 years ago. Jeff is still a good-looking guy. I mean, the camera loves him. He's got an amazing amount of natural charisma. He doesn't know how to use it. He does in the ring. I mean, obviously, the things that he's done in the ring are off the charts, artful, impressive, incredible, whatever words you want to use. His mic skills, he's never been good at that. He's been adequate at best, but never really found his voice as a character. Had he not spent so much time fighting demons, and had he put the same energy into developing that skill as he had developed his skill in the ring, given his look and his natural charisma and the way the audience connected to him, I understand why he feels that way, and I don't think he's wrong. Bigger than, I don't know, that's a little tough. But do I believe 100% that Jeff Hardy could have eclipsed the height of the career he's already had? Absolutely believe it 100%. By the way, that goes for anybody out there that's a talent. Unless you're really good on the mic, the one way you can stand out to this day to separate yourself from everybody else and be different than all the people around you who are also really good in the ring is find your voice, man. Find that character and get really comfortable with a mic in your hand, because if you do, you're unstoppable, as Diamond Dallas Page would say. But a lot of guys developed it, like Jeff Hardy, amazing skill sets, could do crazy things. He was just fearless, all of those things that we know Jeff for. But imagine if Jeff had the gift that Rock has with a mic, or John Cena had with with the mic, or Chris Jericho had with the mic. Sheesh. Scared me to death.
Terry is inside the ring, inside the cage. She's locked inside the cage for this match. Al Snow's gotten rid of the referee and locked him out. Of course, JR is letting us know that the only way to win the match is by pin, submission, or escape. But since the referee's locked out, that's going to be challenging.
This is weird.
We see Dustin's, I guess at this point, maybe ex-wife. I'm not sure if they're together at that point or not. But either way, we know that she was his wife. Did Mrs. B ever, was there ever an idea or even a discussion about her making an appearance on a wrestling program at any point ever?
Never.
Yeah.
Never. No. It would have no.
You couldn't say never harder or faster, could you?
No, it's just she would have never done it. You know, she just couldn't see herself doing something like that. And I wouldn't have asked her to because she would have been really uncomfortable doing it.
I think she would have been great at it.
She could have been. She could have been really great. If she wanted to be a character, she could have been really great. But that's just not her thing. Never was.
I know that Garrett had some interest, and obviously he had some fun in TNA and did the whole training school. And I mean, he did it the right way. Was Montana ever even remotely interested? Did it cross her mind at any point?
No.
Yeah.
No, she's interested in the business side of things.
But not big.
My daughter was largely responsible for the Cody Rhodes reality show that was on TBS or TNT, whatever it was on, when Cody was still in AEW. My daughter was the one that got that deal put together. A lot of other people took credit for it, but she had been working on that project for a long time before any of the people that jumped on board took credit for that idea. And she found the showrunner, which was one of the critical components of that effort. The showrunner for that show was a friend of hers. And she worked with Cody. She worked a long time to get that show up and running. So she's the vice president of development of a production company in Los Angeles as we speak. So she's doing very, very well. She's been very successful on the television and the business side of things. But she doesn't even like me posting pictures of her in my social media because it draws too much attention to her. And she doesn't like that attention. And my wife is much like that. And Lori's gotten better about it because she's kind of out in front of things more with the different things that she does professionally. And, she does podcasts. She didn't like public speaking. She was fine in front of a camera. She grew up as a model. She got her first modeling job when she was 4 years old. She was on the front of a Play-Doh can. Play-Doh, that silly, goofy colored.
Yeah. Oh, I know. It's still a thing. No, it's still around.
Her first modeling gig was to be the cover kid on Play-Doh cans when she was like 4. And she had been a model all the way up into the day I met her was because of modeling. So she was always comfortable in front of the camera. But when it came to speaking or performing, shut down. And that's changed, but Montana still has a lot of that. Still has a lot of her mother's characteristics when it comes to just being in public. She's shy.
Eric, I'm not sure if this is it or not, but in our private link here, our private chat, I just posted a link. Is that Mrs. B as a kid right there?
Just pop it up.
No, I mean, I sent it to you in the private chat.
Oh, well, let me click on it. Let's see. I can't tell if that's her or not. It might be. It could be. That's not the can I remember seeing. She had another one. She may still have it somewhere around the house. I don't know.
We got to find that and throw that up, because if we could find an old image of her on a Play-Doh can, that'd be a find for the.
I think she has it. I'll ask her if she's got it sitting around the house anywhere.
Yeah. So stay tuned, and Eric Bischoff will post that on his social if he can find it, because I think that would be hilarious to see. Oh my goodness!
She was a cute kid.
Terry's trying to escape the cage, and Al Snow is going after her. Matt Hardy is in there trying to make the save. So there you go. Matt Hardy has saved the day. Jeff Hardy has picked up the win. Al Snow is left laying. By the way, as a reminder, we're about a year removed from the finger poke of doom. With the benefit of hindsight, and I know we've covered that in our archives, we've talked about the myth that was the end of WCW, but a lot of fans still point to it and say that if it wasn't the end, it felt like it was the beginning of the end and all that. And of course, Jeff Jarrett would say, "Oh no, creative is subjective," and I tend to agree with that. But when you're watching what we're watching now, I'm kind of reminded at times how just throwaway, I mean, disposable is maybe a better word, some of this content is, because there's so much of this stuff that I know I saw that I just don't remember. So when something stands out either for being really good or really bad, I don't necessarily think that's always a bad thing, because so much of it, it's just, I didn't remember Al Snow had a cage match with Jeff Hardy. You know what I mean?
Well, there's no reason why you would.
Right.
It wasn't that exciting. There was nothing special happened. There's no reason for you to remember it. There was no emotion that was created during that match that would make you connect with it.
By the way,
your amygdala said, fuck that. I ain't carrying that around. There's no reason to remember that shit. Why am I going to put that in my computer file as a part of my memory when there's no reason for it? So your amygdala, your brain, that part of your brain that controls all that shit, just kicked it out. That's why you don't remember it. Meaningless.
Well, now we've got part 2 of our Have a Bad Day story. So now, wink, wink, Mankind, aka Phineas in a mask, is visiting a children's hospital, and he's meeting the doctor here. Is being portrayed by Triple H. Of course, when Triple H was portraying the unemployment agent, he was Harry Sack. Do you want to guess his doctor name here?
No.
Hung Low. Dr. Hung Low has just done some karate, aka kicking Mankind in the balls. I don't think he could get away with wearing those glasses today in 2025. We're still doing it. Now we're going to a Mankind book signing. Allegedly, we're in a bookstore and we've got his Have a Nice Day book there, but there's no one in line to meet him.
This is really pretty horseshit.
It's a lot horseshit. I know they're trying to have fun, and I get that they're trying to be lighthearted and they're trying to be entertaining. And I'm sure it can be, but it does feel like a bit of a miss.
Yeah, I mean, and again, I can't hear it. So without hearing the dialogue and maybe getting the joke, it's a little hard just watching the video. But you asked me earlier, do I think these things can be successful? Absolutely, I do. If it's a well-produced skit that's funny and is intended to be funny and is, as you know, a lot of people think they're funny, but very few people are comedians, good ones. And if you can find somebody that can write good material and take a skit like that and make it fun, I think it's awesome. Dusty Rhodes, man, wrestling's a buffet. Just go find something you like. Cool. But when they're not funny, it's just wasted space. It actually takes away from the product. Nobody wants to hear people that aren't funny trying to be funny, or people who think they can sing and have a shitty voice. Nobody wants to hear it.
The DX celebration is continuing backstage. Of course, we're getting ready for our big main event. It's The Rock versus X-Pac, Billy Gunn, and Road Dogg. It's 1-on-3. That's what our main event is. But before we get there, it's time for, yet again, more Have a Bad Day. So no one's showing up to Mankind's book signing, and the bookstore owner is upset at him for ruining his business. This is just sort of here for me, man. And I'm trying to be here for you over at savewithconrad.com. But Eric can help you at savewitheric.com. Bet you didn't know that was a thing, did you? Yeah, Eric Bischoff is actually in the mortgage business and has been for years at this point. I think he got his license back in like 2021. We just didn't advertise it to everybody. We didn't let everybody know exactly what we were doing because Eric wanted to actually make sure he could do it and get good at it and get comfortable in it and learn the softwares and get the licensing. And now he can help you check every box. Whether you're looking to get out of that apartment and buy your very first house, Eric can help. As a matter of fact, he can help you buy a house with no money down. They've got programs out there, whether you're a veteran or not, where you can still buy a house with no money down. And if you are a veteran and you're still renting, dude, you're missing out. You should take advantage of your great VA benefits, buy you a house with no money down. And a lot of times your new house payment could be cheaper than your rent. Now you'll start building some equity for yourself, start building some wealth for yourself instead of just giving it to some landlord. How about this though? If you've got credit card debt right now, I want to have a conversation with you because more Americans are carrying credit card debt than ever before. Somehow we're in more credit card debt as a nation than ever before. Trillions of dollars of credit card debt. But it's not too late. There is a solution, and it's been hiding in your house the whole time. It's not in the attic. It's not in the basement. It's not in the junk drawer in your kitchen. It's in the equity in your house. You see, a lot of families put Christmas on a credit card, and they're to like May or June before they pay it off. Well, you could get rid of all that credit card debt right now at savewitheric.com. If you've got credit card debt, you know you can do better than what that interest rate is. What are you paying? 21%, 28%, 31%. I've seen it all. I want to find a way to help you get out of that credit card debt, get a much lower monthly payment. You can even skip your next 2 house payments. Matter of fact, you won't have another house payment until April. We're talking WrestleMania time. Wouldn't that be nice to have a little winter vacation from house payments? And if you put Christmas on a credit card, we can help. Find out how much money you can save right now at savewitheric.com. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but it's not a matter of if we can save you money, but truly a matter of how much. So find out right now for free at savewitheric.com. NMLS number 2129, savewitheric.com. So there you see The Rock. He found the DX locker room. He's trying to get a jump start, and he's in there sneaking in a few punches. And I think when we come back, we're going to be ready to get going here. This is heavy on story, and this is not the Vince Russo era. This is the Tommy Blancha era. Of course, Brian Gerwitz is going to be joining the team, and it's a whole new look creatively behind the scenes.
Who's Tommy Blancha?
He took over for Russo. He was the next guy in that seat.
Oh, really? I didn't know. That's the first time I've heard that name.
He's done a lot of writing and comedy writer, and I guess he's written some other stuff in LA. He's actually got a podcast now, but I met him several years ago doing live shows in the LA area with Bruce. Huh. Really, really fun guy. Took over for Russo around the same time of the Austin injury, the neck injury. If you remember, that was November of 99. So I think that was around the same time he had started, maybe a few weeks prior to that. So right around the same time Russo's out, Tommy's in. So I take it you never met Tommy.
No. If I did, I don't recall it. I apologize, Tommy, but I don't think so. Isn't it amazing? You know, we started out talking about this as we're watching DX coming down the ramp. Shout out to Sean Waltman and his dog Buster, by the way. Cool dog. How far individually, where these people are at now in their life. You know, Sean, we just saw you. He was at ringside. Netflix Raw was pretty cool.
Yeah.
O-Dog. That Paul Levesque guy, you know, he's done all right for himself. Rock is now on the board. He's not just wrestling. He's on the board.
Lillian Garcia is still announcing.
And Lillian's still there. It's awesome. It's just so fascinating to look. I mean, this is 25 years ago. There are adults who vote and have important jobs who weren't even alive when this was happening. And a lot of these guys, you know, Billy Gunn's still out there doing it. It's just so awesome. I love seeing this. And the power couple of all power couples.
I mean, that is the definition of a power couple in wrestling right there.
Oh, yeah. And, by the way, they went to the, they spent New Year's Eve with the president-elect of the United States. Yeah, just little things like that. You know, that's how far we've come. 25 years, no big deal. Wow. That's crazy.
You know, that is such a weird sentence because it's Donald Trump. I just don't even think about it. And it's like, oh, yeah, well, he was a part of WWE. And I just kind of sometimes don't even think about him being the president. I'm not trying to have a political conversation. But when you're like, oh, yeah, the people who run WWE, the WWE champion who's got Vince McMahon's daughter in his lap with the world title drinking champagne He spent New Year's Eve. I didn't know that, but he spent New Year's Eve with the president. Oh, okay. Like, think about that in any other context. Like, oh yeah, well, this wrestling champ, he spent New Year's Eve. What now? What that feels like those words shouldn't touch, huh?
And even I have to catch myself because, I was in the thick of things back in the late 90s when wrestling was fever pitch and everybody recognizes it in the industry and out of the industry. That was a huge, huge period of time for the wrestling industry in general. But look at where we are now. In so many ways, we're so far ahead, or WWE, I should say. I'm not part of it. WWE is so far ahead of where they were in the late 90s, or in this case, 2000. And they've reached a level of, it's mainstream. It's not pop culture the way it used to be. And I think that's a difference. And I think maybe that's because of what's happened to our culture, primarily because of social media. But if you look at how the peak of wrestling back in the late 90s, let's say 98, 99, whatever the year was, and you look at the peak now, it may not have the same pop culture impact as it did back then. It may not seem like it, but globally, this business has gotten so much bigger. It's hard to wrap my head around. It fascinates me. It really does.
Goldberg and the rise of Goldberg specifically will be our topic next week here on 83 Weeks. We were supposed to do that one a few weeks ago. We had some holiday conflicts and it didn't work out, but we will be bringing it to you next week. So if you are looking forward to hearing about the rise of Goldberg, stay tuned to 83weeks.com. And if you haven't already, what are you waiting for? Go hit that subscribe button right now and turn on your notifications bell because we go live all the time. Whenever there's breaking news or something major that's happening, we're going to be live at 83weeks.com. We want you to join us and we don't want you to miss out. That could be your chance to interact with Eric and ask him questions live, get his opinion, pick his brain. So go right now to 83weeks.com and hit that subscribe button. My goodness, what a little sequence we saw right there from The Rock and Sean Waltman.
That was awesome.
If there's any wrestlers listening to this, I would encourage you towards, I guess maybe there's 8 minutes or so left in the program. The Rock just finished a little combination where he was working over Sean Waltman between the guardrail or whatever you call it here that separates the fans from the performers, and then the ring post. And I've never seen that little combination before that I can recall. But man, that came together, and I'm sure a lot of that is the magic of Waltman selling. But when he finished, I said to myself, that was badass. Why don't people do that today? Someone needs to steal that, Eric.
I would hope so, for crying out loud. That looks so believable and unique. Stand out. Be different, Dan. Go back and watch this tape per Conrad's suggestion. Work it into your repertoire. Rock was selling his ass off here for this. Isn't that's kind of like a common characteristic of the talented app actually reaches the very top of the business? Is they're all good at selling.
Yeah. It's the secret sauce.
It's just so consistently. It's in the selling. The art is in the selling. So good. The selling is what creates the emotion.
We talked a minute ago about all the guys in the ring. Behind the scenes, Road Dogg is one of the more important players in WWE. And, he's helping with the TV and production and writing. And, I mean, he really is one of the major cogs in the wheel. And we know that, Billy Gunn is much more than just an agent for AEW. He's also an in-ring performer and doing literally whatever he wants in AEW and having a great time doing it. And we know that Triple H is the king of the mountain. I mean, he's running wrestling right now for real. But I guess I'm kind of surprised that the person that we all regarded in this era as being sort of the measuring stick for what a good in-ring performer was, and Sean Waltman, I don't know that he has an official role with WWE. I just kind of assumed by now that dude might be running NXT or I don't know, but do you think he just doesn't have the interest in it, or why don't you think we see Waltman in a more formal official capacity with WWE?
I can't think of a good reason. He's, I was with him in Orlando a couple of weeks ago. We spent quite a bit of time together, had lunch together, breakfast together, and hung out during the course of the day. And I worked with him, in the what do they call them, Legends and Future Greats, LFG.
Yep.
I got to work with him a little bit and watch Sean interact with some of the young talent there, coaching, so to speak. He's so good at it. He's passionate about it. He really, really is good. I can't imagine that there's not a reason, or there's not a role for him down in Florida. And, Sean's married. He's got a wife that's got a great job in Hollywood, and they've got a home, and he's got a great life, and he gets to go jog up into, of course, I don't know. I should give him a call. Things might be a little different now with the fires, but just 2-3 weeks ago when we were together, man, he was living a great life, and he may just be ready to make appearances every now and then. I know how that feels. You still love the business. You still have a passion for it, but it's tempered by reality. And, the idea of moving to Orlando and living down there all year round and, spending all day in a training facility may not be the best idea for Sean Waltman right now. He may be enjoying what he's doing too much.
Well, we enjoyed what he did in front of the camera. I hope we get to see more of him sooner rather than later.
Such a talented guy. He really is.
Like if I started a wrestling company tomorrow, I think if I needed people working in the backstage area and people I knew I could count on and, who were going to make sure we had a great show. Like I think I'd call Waltman. He'd be one of the first guys I'd call.
100%, 100%, because he's got great insight. He's got no ego. I mean, he's very honest, and he's got a great instinct, and he understands it, and he understands how to communicate it. He's a really talented guy.
The Rock is setting up the people's elbow. Look at the crowd going bananas. Listen, I know that this has been beaten to death, but just take a look at the response in this crowd from this move. And you want to talk about literally the safest move in the history of wrestling. That's got to be the safest, most delightful finisher. Like we've all heard that story of Vince McMahon being in the bar and taking all the guys' finishes. The one I'd sign up for, hey, Rock, you can hit me with the people's elbow. Like the idea that, and I know that wrestling has evolved and it's changing and it's much more fast paced and hard hitting and strong style or whatever you want to call it now. I get it. But the reaction that we saw there from really just running the ropes and hitting an elbow, and the place goes bananas, waiting on him to tear off his elbow pad. Man, that's the magic of wrestling. You don't have to dump guys on their head. You can just, bring the entertainment to sports entertainment. And that works better more often than not.
And you could do it forever without killing your career or your opponents.
Yes.
I mean, Rock will be able to go out there and drop that elbow till he's 75 if he wants to. It doesn't take a lot out of you. It's not like, look at Hogan's leg drop. There's a reason why Hulk walks the way he walks. And you look at all of the top talent, with the exception of probably Ric Flair, they're all walking around, and you can pretty much tell they were professional wrestlers because they're busted up so badly. And a lot of it has to do with Hulk. In Hulk's case, it was his finisher, dropping that 300 pounds on his left ass cheek or whatever it was, 300 times a year, jammed his back up so bad that it takes away quality of life years down the road. And if I was a young wrestler, if I was 25, 23, 24, 25, I'd be looking at finishes like Rock's, something that I can do 300 days a year so I can make the most money possible, as opposed to doing some crazy ass shit that looks really cool when you can do it 2 or 3 times a year when you're not injured the rest of the year. It's just, if it's your career, make it last.
Well said. I was going to say the exact same thing you did about the leg drop. I'm not just talking about modern wrestling and, dumping people on their heads and, oh, you're going to be in a wheelchair. I'm not giving that whole speech, but I am just saying something as simple as a leg drop on a concrete ring over and over and over and over. Hulk Hogan will tell you, I don't know if that's the best for you. So a really safe looking finisher, as silly as it was over, and he got it over. And this match is over because The Rock just went over. He beat not one, not two, but three members of DX. And Stephanie and Triple H can't believe it. The finish of this is pretty good. The way we started with The Rock opening the show and Triple H throwing down the gauntlet and we're going to punish you. And somehow he foiled him again. That's a pretty good story arc inside of a single show, don't you think?
A beginning and a middle and an end.
Yes.
How amazing is that?
Well, that brings us to the end of this show, but we're going to be back before you know it. We don't know what's coming next with this news that we keep hearing. Maybe there's a chance we'll be live this weekend with more news. Maybe we'll be live on Monday after something crazy happens on Raw. Don't miss it. Join us. Be a part of the conversation. Interact with us. Ask Eric questions. Join us at 83weeks.com. Hit that subscribe button. Turn on the notifications bell. And don't forget to tune in next Friday for the Rise of Goldberg right here on 83 Weeks with Eric Bischoff. Hey, it's Conrad Thompson here to tell you a little more about what AdFreeShows.com is all about. Get early, ad-free access to more than a dozen of your favorite wrestling podcasts every single week, starting at just $9. That's less than 20 cents an episode each month. And yes, you can listen to them all directly through Apple Podcasts or your regular podcast apps. How easy is that? AdFree Shows also has thousands of hours worth of bonus content and docuseries like Title Chase, Eric Fires Back, Conversations with Conrad, and The Insiders. Plus new series like The Book with David Crockett, Monday Mailbags with Mike Chioda and Nick Patrick, and a whole lot more. And you want to talk about early? You can't get any earlier than listening to the shows live. You can be a part of the live studio audience as we record the podcast. Plus, ride shotgun alongside your favorite childhood heroes for live watch-alongs, Q&As, and other interactive experiences every single month. Come on now, see for yourself what thousands of other wrestling fans from around the world have discovered, that AdFreeShows.com is the best value in wrestling. Check it out today, and hey, when you do, the first week is completely free. AdFreeShows.com.